Welcome to AAC Global's first webinar of 2015. My name is Anna Tubal and I will be opening and closing this webinar. And today's topic is about dealing with difficult people, and the presenter will be one of our own, Mike Dowds. And if you have any questions or comments, you can use the chat window and we will answer all your questions and comments after the webinar by email. This webinar will be recorded, so if you're unable to attend or there has been some technical problems, don't worry. We will post this webinar afterwards on our website and also send it to you as a link. We will also be sending you a feedback form, so we would be so glad to hear your thoughts on this webinar and the webinars to come. But without further ado, Mike, welcome.
Hi. Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you very much, Anna, and also I'd like to say as well, welcome to this webinar, first webinar of 2015. So, dealing with, as Anna has already told us, but what I'm really here to do today is to show you how you can stamp out bad meeting behavior once and for all. I'm going to look at this in three different ways. The first thing is that we're going to look at the role of the meeting organizer and see, or make sure, sorry, that you as a meeting organizer have done everything you can in advance to stop meeting behavior going bad. And then secondly, we'll look at types of behavior that you might encounter inside a meeting and how to deal with them as they occur. And then the last thing, which is probably the most important thing, is that we'll give you a quick tool, very simple thing that you can use from today to make your meetings become much smoother and more productive. So let's get started with the first topic, which is related to the role of the organizer themselves. Now, it might surprise you to think that quite a lot of the time, when a meeting does not go smoothly or productively, it's not the participant's fault. It's actually the meeting organizer's fault. And if you're the meeting organizer, that means it's your fault. So what we want to do is make sure that you have covered everything you possibly could have done so that it goes smoothly. We need to, because we're dealing with meetings in English, it's very important that we discuss some cultural issues. There are two main cultural issues you really need to think about in English. The first one is that English speakers are naturally rebellious people, and also, in order to get ahead at work and in business, people usually have that as a personality trait. Now, what that means is that if you give people just rules, it doesn't mean they're going to follow them. In fact, many people take quite a lot of pleasure in finding ways to not follow rules. So we need to find a different way to deal with that. But actually, more important than that is what we're going to deal with now. So let's have a look at this next slide, which shows you that in English-speaking cultures, people's time belongs to them at all times, and that includes at work as well. So, for example, because we are highly individualistic people, if you're an employer, you don't own the time of your employees in any way. That means that if you want them to come to a meeting or a presentation, that's time that you're taking away from them, right? So keeping that in mind is very important when you want to set up a meeting. And we can even go as far to say that it's actually a crime to waste somebody's time. And that's something you can remember. I know it's a bit cheesy to do that kind of rhyming, but let's try to keep that in mind. So, how do we avoid wasting our people's time? Well, many of these things I'm about to go through now are, of course, completely obvious. But remember, if you haven't done these and you go to a meeting and it's not smooth or productive, it's probably not the participant's fault. It's probably your fault. So therefore, please make sure that you do these. This is the minimum you're expected to do. So the first thing, of course, is to make sure to invite only the right people to your meetings. Now, how do we define what the right person is? Well, it's quite simple. The way we want to define the right person is somebody who is able to participate and contribute to the meeting. So that rules out anybody who is going to come and just get some information from the meeting. That's not the place. You should give information to them at another time. They won't thank you for inviting them to a meeting where they just sit and listen to you for 30 minutes. But it's even more important to think about how much this is costing you to invite the wrong person. It actually costs the company in 3 different ways. The first one, of course, is it costs you the salary for that person's time. If they go to a meeting for an hour, that's 1 hour's salary wasted if they don't contribute. Secondly, there's an opportunity cost because they could be generating income for the company doing their so-called real job. And then, not only that, but they're also going to spoil the meeting in itself. So you might end up ruining the entire meeting by having the wrong person there. So this is why I've put it down as number 1, because the potential cost of getting this wrong is very, very high. So moving on, the others are a little bit simpler to go through. Of course, you need to have a goal, and everybody knows this already, but maybe the extra bit is that the goal of your meeting you should just have one main topic. If you have several different topics in a meeting, it's almost impossible to invite the right people. Usually you will have someone who's the right person for one topic, but not for another topic. And that's exactly the same as wasting their time with the same costs, even if it's just 15 minutes. Of course, you need to send an agenda in advance, nice and detailed, giving people time to get prepared and make sure that all of the agenda points are related to your single goal. Fourthly, preparation material. If people need to prepare, they maybe need to have the tools to do so. So you must provide them with enough information so that they can prepare properly and, more importantly, enough time so that they can do it, not just the day before. If you really want it good, 2-3 days before, and then they can choose when the best time is for them to prepare for your meeting. Remember, their time belongs to them, so they make the decision. Number 5, absolutely crucial and often forgotten here. Make sure that every meeting has somebody who can take fast, accurate notes. Secretary. It doesn't have to be somebody whose job title is secretary, but somebody must do this because otherwise we're going to end up with some problems that we'll see later. And then, last but not least, especially for English speakers, we need to give people a little bit of time in order to chat to each other before the meeting starts. And what this does is gets all the small talk and the off-topic discussions and catching up out of the way. Okay, I've just noticed on chat someone saying, may we have the material? Yes, this is being recorded and you will get a copy of this later. Sorry, I just noticed that. Right, so this is your job. Remember, if you haven't done this and the meeting goes wrongly, you have to take at least some of the blame for that. But now we're going to assume that you have done all of this. What happens next if you still go to the meeting and it's not working properly? Okay, so remember the assumption is that we've done all this already. So let's move on. What kinds of behavior can you encounter in a meeting which we can call bad behavior? If I asked you now to describe types of behavior that you would count as bad, I know that most of you are going to mention things like sending emails, looking at your mobile phone, not being prepared, and so on. All right. Now, if I keep asking you, we can come up with a huge long list of different types of bad behavior that goes on during a meeting. But what we really want to do is keep this simple. So it's actually possible to categorize behavior into 4 different categories. And then we think about how to deal with the category of behavior rather than the individual thing. So we're not going to deal with someone on their phone. We're going to find out what category does being on your phone belong to, and then we can deal with that. And that will also work for anything else in the same category. So let's start with the first category. And this category, well, will definitely be there if you invite the wrong people. But sometimes, even when you invite the right people, they can still behave like this. And what we're going to do is we're going to call them non-participants. And here they are. In the yellow box on the left, you can see some examples of non-participant behavior. And on the right, you can see what the problem is with people who don't participate in the meeting. First and foremost, people who don't participate are not contributing to the goal. So actually, that's the main reason why you don't want them to be there. On the second thing, they also spoil the productive atmosphere because their lack of participation can be caught, if you like, by the other people in the meeting, and it brings the atmosphere level down. And then, if you allow this to occur in a meeting as an organizer, it sets a very bad example for future meetings. It basically says, it's okay to come to my meetings unprepared and quiet. I would like to deal quickly with a couple of these examples of behavior because they're very specific to English speakers, and that is the fact that I've introduced the word shy and introvert into bad behavior. In English-speaking culture, shyness, well, there are shy people, of course, the same number as anywhere else. But in the business world, being shy is never an excuse for anything. Everybody must be able to switch on their sort of enthusiastic and talkative personality when they need to. That means when they meet a client or when they're in a meeting. Shy people simply have to work harder at this. It's a skill which takes practice. Introverted people are exactly the same. Everybody in English, when they go to a meeting, looks like an extrovert, but that doesn't mean that they are an extrovert. It just means that they know they have to act like one. And maybe after the meeting, they need to go away and have a sit down because it was very tiring. Okay, so please keep that in mind. And remember, don't allow people not to speak in meetings because they claim to be shy. If that's the case, then they shouldn't be in the meeting anyway. Right, so there's the first group of behavior, which we call non-participants or non-participators. Second group, moving on, is the non-concentrator. This is the one that everybody comes up with first, all the phones and stuff like that. And a non-participator, or a non-concentrator, sorry, is somebody who is only spending some of the time in the meeting. The rest of the time they are elsewhere in their heads, right? Their main problem is that they spoil the meeting flow because very often they need to ask, oh, what's going on, or they've missed something, or they're distracting others, and it stops the meeting from going smoothly from start to finish. So the obvious thing that happens with that is that meetings usually get extended. And if we go back to that original thing that wasting somebody's time is a crime, if your meeting goes over the time, then you are wasting time. And I'm watching the meeting clock on my computer to make sure that I don't go over the 20 minutes, because this is programmed into every English speaker. And then, of course, like in the first case, this is going to set a very bad example that it's okay to have your phone out. Now, again, some of you might be looking at the examples of bad behavior and want to argue with me about the last one, which says making notes. And many people get their laptops out in their meetings and they say, I need to make some notes. And most people say, that's absolutely fine. But I say, no, you're not allowed to make notes. And what I mean by making notes is sitting and typing everything that's going on all the way through, or with a pen and paper, writing, drawing constantly during the meeting, because you're not concentrating on the meeting. So that's the first thing. How do we solve that problem? What if someone needs notes? Well, it's very simple. There are two things you can do. The first thing is that nowadays with modern technology, you can simply record the meeting so they can come back to it later and just put a dictaphone on the side or use a webinar program like this, and you can get pictures. And of course, as we mentioned earlier, you should have a secretary. And what happens is that any notes that need to go down go in the minutes, and the people should ask the secretary to do so. And then, if they really want to make notes themselves, it's absolutely fine to stop the meeting for 1 second and say, excuse me, I just need to write this one thing down. If you do that, that's totally fine. But we must stop people sitting on their laptops, type, right? So let's see. Oh, I've got a really interesting question here. I would like to deal with that. We've got time. Should you just leave the meeting if you're invited to the wrong meeting? No, is the answer. But what I would suggest you do is that if you know you're going to the wrong meeting or been invited and you are able to do this, don't accept the invitation. That's what I would do. Just say, I can't come because there's nothing for me. So Mario, that was your question there. So obviously you can't get up and leave the meeting. No, that you just have to sit there and next time remember what happened and possibly don't go. All right, so let's move on. There's two more categories to deal with, which are dominators, people who speak too much. Their main problem is they're going to extend the meeting time, they're going to bully other people, and again, set a bad example. And the final category are our over-negative types, especially important in English because English meetings are supposed to be very positive and everything looked at from a positive side, and they spoil the productive atmosphere and they don't really contribute. So looking at those types of behavior, if you see them in a meeting, you will have to deal with them. Absolutely never let any of this behavior go without a challenge. And if you're a participant and not the meeting organizer, please also challenge, even challenge the chairperson if they're doing it. Right? In English-speaking society, it's absolutely fine to do that. You don't have to let the boss do everything. That's not part of what English-speaking is all about. So very quickly, I'm going to show you some phrases because this is not what I really want you to do. We're going to talk about the real tool at the end. But there are, of course, diplomatic phrases that can be used to deal with behavior as it occurs. And I'm going to just show you them all together or very quickly. You've seen these before and you can just borrow these for the future. So with non-participators, you mention their name. That's all you have to do. With non-concentrators, you remind them that there is a goal to be set and we need to follow it. And then you can remind them about that the notes are being taken. With dominators, you want to tell them that their contribution is very interesting, but we need to move on, or something along the lines of that this is not the right place to talk about it. And then with the negative people, we want to use a nice phrase where we ask them to keep an open mind or to try to find positive sides. So all of these diplomatic phrases, the reason these work in practice is that they are exactly right between aggressive and what we call passive aggressive. But let's leave those alone for a second because I want to get on to what we're really here to do. Because these are reactive solutions that you can only use these when they actually happen. So it's a bit risky because you might get conflict and people might start arguing with you. So what we want to do is deal with these things before they actually happen. And it's actually very easy to do that. All you have to do is create a list of simple meeting rules that everybody must agree with and that they always remember. And let's just look at how we could do that. So the first thing you need to do, remember, rebellious English speakers need rules to be justified. So I will justify setting rules with a sentence like this, which I'll put at the top of my email or whatever I'm going to use to make a rule book. So we can have smooth, productive meetings. Let's follow these tips. Now, if I ask you to find someone who doesn't want a smooth, productive meeting, you won't be able to find one. So therefore, everyone has to agree with that. Secondly, we're going to use in the rules a bit of clever layout. Bold stands out and italics hide. So what I'm going to do is use the bold to give very soft commands and the italics to back it up with a much firmer command, like this, for example. This will deal with non-participators. The bold part says that everybody participates. That's nice and soft. It's not even a command. It's just a statement, and people will see that. But if you look carefully afterwards, the next sentence. I don't know what happened there. Sorry, let's continue. The italics is a very strong command. Without the bold bit, come prepared to give ideas and opinions. It's very strong in English, maybe a bit aggressive actually. So the combination of soft and hard is going to be diplomatic, and we can just repeat that down the list. One rule for each type of behavior. There's rule number 2, everybody concentrates. Rule number 3, share the floor. Rule number 4, be positive. Now, these are very simple, easy to remember, and what you should do now is just make a little change to this diagram because we still want to use those diplomatic phrases, but we're not going to use them there. We want to use them the other way round. So first of all, you've set up your meeting perfectly. And then you've sent out the 7th thing. If we go back to that original slide of 6, this is your 7th thing. Make sure you've sent out in advance the good practice so that everybody knows. And then as the behavior occurs in the meeting, you just remind them of what they've already agreed to first. And if that doesn't work, then you can use the diplomatic phrases. Okay, so looking at my time, 19 minutes, 54 seconds. I think I've hit the 20. So I'd like to say thank you very much for coming. And if you need any help with this in the future, we have some contact information. I'm going to pass you back over to Anna now. Thank you. Have a great weekend. And Anna.
Thank you, Mike, for your time. And thank you all for listening. And I hope you got some new information. And if you have any questions or you have needs for a similar kind of presentation by Mike or someone else, please do contact us. And the next webinar is on the 25th of February about website renewal. And from that, we will send you another invitation again and hope to see you all then. I want to wish you all a very nice weekend. Thank you again. See you. Bye.